So it's important that the immediate task for each and every person in the African continent is to return Africa for African people. My name is Buka Ngesa Omole. I am the General Secretary of the Communist Party, now Communist Party Marxist. Normally, I always say that I am a product of student activism because that is where my thoughts on Marxist literature was refined. So it's also important to understand that I was born and brought up in the rural area, mainly where religion is quite high. It's very, intense in terms of religious propaganda, particularly the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church and other evangelical churches. So that is where I was brought up in the western part of Kenya, particularly Nyanza region. It's a small town in Siaya County. So I grew up. I only came to the city to pursue education. I went to University of Nairobi, where we are seated at. This compound is part of the University of Nairobi, and I came here to study mechanical engineering. And later on, I got interested in philosophy. I think what the global South needs, what the African continent needs, are strong political parties. I have no other goals other than the goals of the party, the collective goals of the majority that we have actually made possible in form of our reflections, in terms of our writing. We have just concluded the second National Congress of the Communist Party Marxist. And this has outlined the basic minimum program and the maximum program of the Communist Party. And also, our party is the fastest growing political party in the continent. Remember, during the 1980s, it is only people got attracted to the party by being introduced to them. For example, there was the Soviets at that time, there was the emergence of the Chinese socialism. But now people look at our party to find refuge. So we have many people that have been, in total suffering, and they see our political party as the only hope. So if you are to understand our collective objective is that we want to build a strong, pro-people, working class-led political party in Kenya, and also interconnect with other political parties on the left in the African continent. This is important to us because remember, not just a shared history, but also a shared struggle of the African continent. And the African people have had a shared history, not just in slavery, but also colonialism and now neocolonialism. In fact, we were just discussing with you a few minutes ago how several, liberation movements in Africa have compromised to neocolonial projects. This is important for us to continue to investigate, to understand what is the really problems in Africa. Because if you look at the analysis why Africa is poor, people want to say the African continent people are lazy, but they forgot that the poverty in the African continent is a shared responsibility between the global north and the global south, not just the rented people that manages our resources here on behalf of the ruling class, particularly in Europe and the United States, but also is a shared responsibility in that we are a country that has been stagnated for more than 400 years, not just for, on slavery, but also on colonialism and even the neocolonialism that still continues with us. So the immediate task for the communists in the African continent is to define the character of their struggle. And this is what the Communist Party Marxist is very important for us. And remember, during the Second National Congress, we want to say that our immediate task is to complete our independence. Remember, we always mention our fallen comrade Amilcar Cabral, that states that without economic independence, we don't have sovereignty. And without sovereignty, we don't have free men. So it's important that the immediate task for each and every person in the African continent is to return Africa for African people, is to return Kenya to the Kenyan people. It's important for us to realize that, because remember, our economy has been stagnating since 1980s. Why are we having a stagnating economy? It's because we do not run our economy on the best interest of the majority of the Kenyan people. We run our economy only on the interest of the people who intervene and humiliate us by determining who our politicians and the political systems that governs us. So if you ask me about the immediate goal of the Communist Party Marxist is to complete our independence. In fact, we are now mobilizing not just Marxists, but we are mobilizing all democratic forces in our country to finish our independence, to bring total economic independence that will translate into sovereignty and brings real freedom for the people in the African continent. And we are saying that never again shall Kenyan people, shall the African people be humiliated by interventionist, a foreign interest that only want to use the African continent to benefit their own selfish ends. Remember, Nairobi is the belly of imperialism in East Africa. Kenya is being held by the teeth by United States imperialism, and they are not willing to let Kenya go. Remember, Kenya has just been declared a non-NATO ally. It basically means that there will be more financing of lethal force to be used against the Kenyan people. Remember, Kenya is being used by the United States to attack other countries. For example, the drones that are flying from the archipelago at the coast, mainly in Mada Islands, to attack the Yemen, basically just show you how Kenya is being used as a pawn in the chessboard of the United States imperialism. This is important. Our security system is infused by the United States intelligence and the Mossad, which is actually the Zionist entity here. So that means we are being targeted. Definitely all our members that are known by the state are either on physical and digital surveillance. So it's important that we are always looking for alternative ways to bypass the state surveillance on a daily basis. This is also a country that the judicial system is so skewed. It only works for the rich people and not for the poor people. Remember, we are even fighting to defend our name, the Communist Party of Kenya. Why are we adding the name Marxist to the Communist Party? Because the state has made sure that it has stolen our name and made it impossible to register it at the Register of Political Parties, because the state has appointed a few people that were actually reactionaries to impose them as the leaders of the communist movement. These two individuals are the people that have made us to change the name Communist Party Marxist. But in actual sense, we are the Communist Party of Kenya. But if you go to the Register of Political Parties, anything that is registrable with the name Communist, they have done Communist Party Kenya, Communist Party Kenya Marxist all this, they are trying to block the registration so that if you go to the register of political parties, anything that can be populated with the word communism that name is already taken away by some state agents. So we have serious also challenges. And remember that since the fall of the Soviet Union and of course the return of revisionism by Deng Xiaoping in China, the communist organization and workers' parties and political parties in the African continent, mainly in the global south, are fairly weak. They are not just under-resourced, but they are continuously being targeted by the neocolonial projects. So we always are struggling with bare basic. Remember, we are a party of professional revolutionaries, and most of our party members are full-time workers in the party. So, and they are struggling with the basic needs, just like food, To be able to be a revolutionary, you have to only have a meal a day. We are fighting with the fairly basic issues of looking for clothing. Sometimes we have to, retreat to the humiliation of receiving donations in terms of wares to our cadres because we don't have nothing for them to put on. So these are we are organizing the Communist Party Marxist in very extreme difficulties for us. And remember, majority of the Kenyan people still live in the backwardness in the rural areas. So even I could tell you we are much stronger in the rural areas because of the landlessness and the squatter problems that have been imposed upon the majority of the Kenyan people, that most of the land is still in the hands of the big British landlords that colonized us, the big politicians that they appointed to govern this country on their own behalf. So if you're talking about challenges of the Communist Party Marxist and the Kenyan people, they are enormous. But like I will say that we are meeting these challenges with a lot of humility and boldness, because we know that the only path that can rescue the majority of our Kenyan people is a pro-people political party, which in essence all other political parties in our country cannot be called even center-left or center-right. They are all right-wing capitalist political parties, mainly being funded by political parties in Europe and United States of America. So we don't see any hope in those political parties. And that is why we are able to even endure the continuous extrajudicial killing. The Communist Party has lost 69 finest daughters and sons in Kenya through police violence, through extrajudicial killing. Remember, now, according to Madare records at the moment, 1,800 young, poor Kenyan people are extrajudicially murdered by the state every year. This is higher than malaria. It is higher than any other disease that we've had. Many people that have, in fact, we were even doing a more deep analysis in terms of the people who died in this country from the COVID pandemic and even the HIV scourge. They are much less as compared to the number of people that are being murdered by the state itself. And in fact, the state has tried to use scare tactics for members not to join our party by making sure that only last week when you were here, my chairperson and my national organizing secretary were in jail for organizing only one march, which is the anti-femicide march, while the same government was approving a bill to allow the sale of body parts. And this, illegal sale of organs is what is causing even many businessmen here to murder young girls and young sons to make sure that they can export their body organs to whoever can afford them. So the police harassment, we have a few of our comrades still in jail to date. They have never been, sought justice. And even the little resources that we have, the state is making sure that we are committing our resources to pay the state in terms of cash bills and in terms of course, a legal fee. Now, at least in the party, we have a few lawyers that we don't need to pay. But in the olden days, when we had not developed the capacity of our legal team, we had even to spend more money. So all I'm saying is that we have many challenges, but we are overcoming them every day. There are two shades of Pan-Africanism. It's important. Because you can look at Pan-Africanism as a movement, and you can also look at Pan-Africanism as an ideology. And finally, you can look at Pan-Africanism as an objective. The Communist Party Marxist takes the third definition, that Pan-Africanism is an objective of a totally independent, liberated Africa and African people wherever they find themselves. Now, this is informed not just by the shared history, but our continental unity must be different from the continental unity of Europe. Remember, the European unity was built on the innocent blood of the workers in the global south. It was built on the corpses of the black people. But when we are talking about the continental unity, we do not want to enslave anyone. We do not want to colonize anyone. So we are only saying that this objective must not be capitalist or imperialist. So in essence, we are saying that Pan-Africanism is the desired objective of a united, liberated, free African continent and African people wherever they find themselves. But the software that runs the Pan-Africanism is scientific socialism. Again, my message will only go to the majority of the youth in the majority of the African youth that continue to suffer under the yoke of imperialism, and to tell them that the only hope that they have is to fight for socialism and make sure that they can unite. There is no difference between the immigrant workers and the European working class. The European working class probably have certain privileges because their ruling class can be able to plunder from the global south. But at the very end of it, there must be a unity between the working class in Africa and the working class in the imperial core and the working class in Europe. This is fundamental in the sense that the only solidarity the working class in Europe can give Africa, a genuine solidarity, is to resist their repressive government. Then they will not have time to come to Africa to intervene on our internal affairs. So the African working in diaspora must run away from the race question and make sure that they deliberately involve in organizations of the working class in Europe and bring a new consciousness and a new experience to make sure that they are not only going there to make money to send to their families, but they are also going there to join the liberation movement and making sure that they can do political organizing to bring a new reality. Of course, for us in the Communist Party Marxist, before the Gen Z uprising, we probably had doubts of seeing the Kenyan Revolution in our lifetime. But now we can confirm that there is a lot of hope here in Kenya, because one of the most important tools that the ruling class uses to deceive the population, that is information, is now on our side. The people has won the most important tool to rule. And that is why you see there is introduction of fascism in our country. Because if they cannot lie to you to support them, then they must now try to use violence to force you to support them. But we can see that the Communist Party in 10 years will be ruling Kenya. That is our confidence with the amount of support that we have received from the ordinary Kenyan people and how we intend even to tackle our next processes. Because the Second National Congress has been very clear in terms of generating our long-term and short-term political plans. In fact, we are not just going to the war ourselves. We are now leading one of the broadest and the widest coalitions that is also sharing the same objective, which is to finish our independence. The National Coordination Committee for People's Assembly, with the Communist Party Marxist at its core, is the most popular movement at the moment in Kenya.